بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Alhamdulillah, we're continuing the explanation inshallah of Riyad-us-Saliheen min kalam Sayyid al-Mursaleen, the gardens of the righteous from the speech of the leader of all the messengers, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Riyad, the gardens basically, when you think of gardens, like you think of delight and pleasantness and fruits and being at peace and in contentment. And that's, you find some of the ulama, they call their books with Rawda or Riyad to give that type of impression, because you're going into knowledge that should give you comfort to the heart and pleasure and ease. Just like if you're going into a beautiful garden, you will get that same type of contentment and pleasure and ease. So last week, inshallah, each class or each dar-us or each week, inshallah, we'll go over a quick review. So I'll ask some of the questions for those who were in attendance, inshallah, if they can remember, and then we'll recap a little bit and start the new dars. So last week there was some events I mentioned in Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, his life. I said there were some special indications that showed us he was unique, or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him some blessings and barakah. Does anybody remember one of them? Yes.
One of the signs that you mentioned were when he witnessed the bright light amongst his family, and his the mother and father weren't a witness to that, so that was one of the indications.
Yes, mashallah. When he was 10 years old, he saw a bright light and he woke his family to ask about it. It was the 27th night of Ramadan, and they thought that maybe it might be a sign of Laylatul Qadr, and also they thought or believed that he's a special boy because he's still before the age of bulugh, accountability or puberty, and he's seeing these beautiful visions. Like, yes. Yes, that's the other famous incident where Imam al-Murakshi, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he was visiting Sham and he was passing through Nawa, where Imam al-Nawawi lived, he noticed this young boy trying to hold on to his book and study, and the other children tried to pull him to play. And eventually he started crying because he wanted to be left alone so he can read his books of ilm instead of being distracted by playing with the other children. And this is like the opposite of most children. They want to cry. They cry because they want to play, not the opposite. So this is another indication of his having some type of uniqueness or blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an easy question. What's the name of the book and what does it mean? It means Gardens of the Righteous, yes. What's the complete title of the book, though? I started today's class with that. Min kalam Sayyid al-Mursaleen, yes. Riyad-us-Saliheen, the Gardens of the Righteous, from the words of the leader of the Mursaleen, the leader of the prophets and the messengers, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What title did Imam al-Nawawi not want to be called by? Close. Yes. Yes, Reviver of the Muhyiddin, right? That's his popular nickname even till today, but he did not like that name. He didn't want to be called by that because of his humbleness, and also he didn't want to give the impression that he was reviving the deen, but it's Allah Azza wa Jal who revives the deen. Some things that I forgot to mention, also like special about his life, that other indications that showed he had some barakah or blessedness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At one point, he wanted to study medicine, tib. You can classify Imam Nawawi as kind of a genius, right? So he got the book of medicine by Ibn Sina, and he started to memorize it and learn all about medicine. He delved into it. That's how he is in his life. He delves into sciences. He delves into the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the book of Allah, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he went all into it. But then he said his heart was not at ease. Like he felt kind of depressed or something was wrong or something was off. And he saw that as a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not be preoccupied with this and to go back to what he was originally studying from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the fiqh and the Arabiya and these type of things. And he threw away or he gave away all his books of medicine and went back to what he was originally doing, and he said his heart became at ease again. So that's something that the scholars also say, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used him to preserve or teach or propagate the deen of Islam. Allah didn't want him to get preoccupied with something less beneficial for the ummah. Another thing is that Imam al-Nawawi, unlike many other imams or scholars, he was given qubul by the ummah even after his death for centuries and centuries and centuries, right? It's very, very rare if you can find any criticism of Imam Nawawi as a person or as a scholar. This is something also that shows his high status and his being protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are some modern scholars that mention some things in his aqidah, for example, that he was had some characteristics of the Ash'a'ira. But in general, most scholars talk only good and praise about him. That's another blessing that Imam al-Nawawi had. The third thing I don't think I mentioned was that even another thing after his death, subhanAllah, when he was buried, the people wanted to build, what do you call it? A shrine, yes, or a mausoleum, right, to remember him. And he did not want this, of course, and he actually advised to have the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the grave to be leveled, basically, nothing to show off. So they built it, and subhanAllah, it got destroyed. And they did it again, and it got destroyed somehow. And the third time, it got destroyed, and then the people never tried again. So even after his death, subhanAllah, Allah was protecting him and fulfilling his wish. And this is something else of a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him. The other thing, I didn't mention too much about his physical characteristics. Imam al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that he was basically very dark, and he had a thick beard with some white or some gray hairs, a few gray hairs in it. And he was qalil al-dhahak, very minimal laughing. Adim al-la'ab. It's almost never playing around or playing games. كان جدا صرفا في طاعة الله. That he was most serious and occupied with obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يقول الحق وإن كان مرا. He will speak the truth even if it is bitter. لا يخاف في الله لومة لائم. He does not fear in Allah anything. And also Imam al-Dhahabi described him as one who has hayba and sakina and waqar. That he has basically an awe about him. Like when he walks into the room, he has a very high level of respect from those people that are around him, right? And he has tranquility about him and gentleness and respect. So these were some of the characters I don't know if I mentioned last time. Also, somebody asked me to recap some of the books that he has written. So I'll go through them briefly, inshallah. One of the most famous ones is Al-Minhaj fi Sharh Sahih Muslim ibn Hajjaj. This is a explanation of Sahih Muslim, right? And it's considered one of the best explanations of Sahih Muslim ever written. And even though it's not the longest, there are other explanations, and even some maybe more scholarly, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Imam al-Nawawi barakah to have concise phrases and summarizing the most important issues. So when you read his sharh, subhanAllah, you really understand Sahih Muslim. The other one is Rawdat al-Talibin wa Umdat al-Muftin. This is in fiqh of Imam al-Shafi'i. It's one of the greatest works of fiqh that Imam al-Nawawi, all of his books, subhanAllah, are considered umda, or a foundation in the madhab of Shafi'i. So that was one of them. And also Minhaj al-Talibin. That's a book that many people have memorized in the Shafi'i madhab. Al-Adhkar, that's a book of dua that he compiled. Al-Adhkar al-Muntakhab bin Kalam Sayyid al-Abrar. Remembrances or dua or dhikr that has been selected from the speech of the leader of al-Abrar, the righteous, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, At-Tibyan fi Adab Hamalat al-Quran. This is also a very beautiful book that I advise any reciter of the Quran or any memorizer of the Quran to read. It's basically the manners and characteristics of the one who has memorized the Quran. Another beautiful book and one of the best in its field. The same thing. Like every time, subhanAllah, in all the different fields. So hadith we mentioned, fiqh we mentioned, now even in the ulum of Quran we mentioned, Imam al-Nawawi has some type of work in it. And it's been accepted by the ummah. التحرير في ألفاظ التنبيه لأبي إسحاق الشيرازي. That's in like the Arabic language. He had a very beautiful book in the Arabic language. الإيضاح في المناسك. It's a book in fiqh about the Hajj. إرشاد الطالب. That's in مصطلح حديث. التقريب والتيسير في معرفة سنن البشير النذير. That's also in مصطلح hadith, and that's also a foundational book in the ilm of the sciences of hadith. الأربعين النووية, the 40 hadith by Imam al-Nawawi, that many people around the world, young and old, have memorized actually. It's a compilation of the most important hadith that every Muslim should know, right? And it's also after, or along with Riyad-us-Saliheen, one of the most popular works around the world after the Quran. Bustan al-Arifin, this is like basically a garden of the knowers. It's a book written in zuhd and raqa'iq, like softening the heart and abstination from the dunya, basically. He also has many other books that he didn't complete or are not found. I'm not going to talk about all those, but I just wanted to mention one, which is a famous book called Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Madhab, basically the concise or compilation of the madhab. It's originally a work by a Shafi'i scholar, and he expounded upon it, bringing in all the different madhab. Imam as-Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, if you take that book and then Mughni, if they agree upon a mas'ala, you can consider it haqq. Like it is almost like a hujjah, basically. Right? Imam Ibn Qudama, he's from the Hanabila madhab, he wrote Al-Mughni, which is a similar type of book, which expounds upon the whole chapters of fiqh from every single madhab, and then he says which is the strongest opinion after each mas'ala, right? So Imam al-Nawawi did that in the Shafi'i fiqh, and then he expanded upon the four madhab. Imam Ibn Qudama did it in the Hanbali fiqh, and he expanded upon the four madhab. But Imam as-Suyuti said if you put them together and they agree upon a certain point, then basically khalas, that's the right answer. It's one of the greatest works of fiqh. Unfortunately, he died before he finished it. And several scholars came after to finish it. But if you read the Majmu', there's a clear difference between Imam al-Nawawi's writings and those scholars that came after him. There's a clear difference. Like what is Imam al-Nawawi's work, and you see the difference between that. SubhanAllah, how Allah gave him such barakah in his writings. And I think I mentioned the statement, Imam al-Dhahabi said that if you want to be knowledgeable in the deen, basically I advise you with the Book of Allah, continuously reciting or reading Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and Sunan al-Nasa'i. And I advise you with Riyad al-Saliheen and Istidkar. So basically, 2 out of the 5 books are by Imam al-Nawawi that he advises the ummah with to be a good Muslim or knowledgeable Muslim. So this is the importance of the book. Inshallah, we got into the Muqaddimah, the introduction of Imam al-Nawawi, and we talked about how he basically was showing the purpose of our creation, which is what? What's the ayah he mentioned? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, right? And then he built upon that, expounding upon it and saying, this is, the righteous servants should realize their purpose in life and fulfill this purpose. Also, sorry, I think one more thing a sister asked. I had made a statement about Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, saying that, when he was passing away, what you going to leave for your children? And I said, Allah and His Messenger. And she asked about, is that proper to say that because, the Messenger is not around anymore? So after researching, basically, if it's meant that I leave the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that's fine. Even like some scholars say, when you say Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam, Allah and the Messenger know best. If you mean about the Sharia, some scholars say that's fine. Others say no, you should always say now after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, Allahu a'lam. But to correct the correct narration, I found, alhamdulillah, by the Imam, he didn't say the Prophet ﷺ. So the story says, his children, his advisors came to him and said that you have 12 children and they are poor, fuqara. Imagine the Khalifa of the Ummah, and he has 12 children and they are poor. Like any king in the world, can you imagine that his children are poor as the time you are a king or a leader? Right? SubhanAllah. So he was on his deathbed and they were trying to tell him, leave them something, they're all poor. And he recited the ayat from Surah Al-A'raf, ayah 196, Surah Al-A'raf, إِنَّ وَلِيَ اللَّهُ الَّذِي نَزَّلَ الْكِتَابَ وَهُوَ يَتَوَلَّى الصَّالِحِينَ. Verily my protector is Allah, who revealed the book, and He will take care of the affairs of the righteous. وَلَا وَاللَّهِ لَا أُعْتِيهِمْ حَقَّ أَحَدٍ. By Allah, I will not give them the right of anybody. إِمَّا الصَّالِحِ فَاللَّهُ يَتَوَلَّى الصَّالِحِينَ. If they are righteous, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of their affairs, because Allah takes care of the affairs of the righteous. وَإِمَّا غَيْرَ صَالِحِ فَمَا كُنْتُ لُعِينَهُ عَلَى فِسْقِهِ. And if they are not righteous, I do not want to help them in their evil. And he passed away like that without leaving anything to his children. So that's the correct narration. Jazakallah khair for the sister asking for a clarification of that. We, I believe, mentioned the poem that Imam Nawawi included in his introduction, and I'll just say it again because it's a beautiful poem. إِنَّ لِلَّهِ عِبَادٌ فُطَنَا طَلَّقُوا الدُّنْيَا وَخَافُوا الْفِتَنَا نَظَرُوا فِيهَا فَلَمَّا عَلِمُوا أَنَّهَا لَيْسَتْ لِحَيٍّ وَطَنًا جعلوها لجة واتخذوا صالح الأعمال فيها سفنا. That verily to Allah are some very wise or keen or careful servants. They divorced the dunya and they feared the fitna, the trials and tribulations of it. نظروا فيها فلما علموا. They looked into it and then they understood, or when they understood, أنها ليست لحي وطنا. This is not a permanent abode for the true life, the true living, right? The real hayat is in the akhirah. This is just a temporary one. So it's not a permanent abode for those who are truly to live. Meaning, if you're a believer, your true life will start in the akhirah. This is just passing through. جَعَلُوهَا لُجَّةً وَاتَّخَذُوا. So they made this dunya into an ocean. And they took their صالح الأعمال فيها سفنا. They took their action, their righteous deeds, their good deeds, their good works as a boat to navigate through this dunya. And he mentioned, basically, this is the way of the Saliheen that we should try to implement or emulate, right? And follow. And it's example of Nabiyina Sayyid al-Mursaleen, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وقال تعالى وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى. And Allah says, encourage each other in righteousness and having fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having taqwa. وقد صح عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال والله في عون العبد ما كان العبد في عون أخيه. That it has been authentically narrated upon the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم that Allah is helping the servant who helps his brothers or sisters. وأنه قال من دل على خير فله مثل أجر فاعله ومثل أجر فاعله. That whoever points to a good deed, they will have the same reward as the one who does that good deed. So he's mentioning all these ahadith and ayat to show us what's the purpose of him writing this book. Then he says, وَأَنْهُ قال صلى الله عليه وسلم من دعا إلى هدى كان له من الأجر مثل أجور من تبعه لا ينقص ذلك من أجورهم شيئا. And whoever guides to a good deed or a guidance, he will have the reward of it, the same reward as the person that follows him in that good deed, right? And it will not increase from that person anything, right? So if you teach somebody how to do salah, every time he does salah, you'll get rewarded as if you're doing that salah, subhanAllah, without decreasing his reward, right? So imagine if you teach your children how to pray, or you teach your students how to pray, or you teach somebody to memorize the Quran, or you give da'wah to someone and they become Muslim, and every single good deed they do, until the day they die, you're getting rewards for that, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَنَّهُ قال لعلي رضي الله عنه. The Prophet said to Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, فوالله لأن يهدي الله بك رجلا واحدا خير لك من حمر النعم. That by Allah, if Allah guides through you one person, it's better for you than the red camels, right? Like 10 Mercedes-Benz, the highest level, or whatever car you think, Ferrari or Lamborghini or whatever the best car, Bugatti, right? Like having many of them, if one person becomes Muslim and Allah guides him through you, right? Not only that, but everything that person does until the Day of Judgment, you're getting rewarded for it. So why he's mentioning all of this, now he says, فَرَأَيْتُ أَنْ أَجْمَعَ مُخْتَصَرًا مِنْ أَحَادِيثَ صَحِيحًا. So I saw that I should put together a summary. So Riyad al-Salihin is considered by him a small book, right? A summary of the hadith as-sahiha, the authentic hadith. مشتملا على ما يكون طريقا لصاحبه إلى الآخرة. Basically compiling those things that will lead its companion to the akhirah, into the next life. ومحصن لآدابه الباطنة والظاهرة, and something that will correct his inner and outer affairs, right? So the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he compiled together is to hope to cleanse our heart and to rectify our affairs outwardly and inwardly. جامعا لترغيب وترهيب وساري أنواع آداب السالكين, that it compiles both, those things that scare or encourage us and scare us from the proper adab of the salikin. The salik is the one who is seeking what? I ask you guys, what is a salik or salikin?
It's like taking the way or taking the road.
Taking a route. So a person salik at-tariq, he's taking that path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? There's a book by Ibn Qayyim, it's a very, very beautiful book called Madarij-us-Salikin, the steps of the seekers, right? The ones who are seeking out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking out the guidance from Allah, seeking Jannah. So this is, the book is compiling the hadith and the ayat that will help us in our seeking of Jannah. Min ahadith al-zuhd, from the ahadith of abstination. وَرِيَاضَات النُّفُوس, and those things that will basically exercise the nafs, train the nafs to do what is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and stay away from that which is forbidden. وَتَهْذِيبِ الْأَخْلَاقِ, and it will help us to rectify our character. وَطَهَارَةِ الْقُلُوبِ وَعِلَاجِهَا, and purifying the heart and having a cure for it. Many of us, because of sin or from where we live or what we see, our hearts become sullied or dirty or corrupted, right? So we need constantly to cleanse it and purify it and take away the shirk and take away the ma'siyah and take away the hatred and take away the jealousy and take away, all these illnesses of the heart. So it becomes pure for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you can worship Him correctly. So the Imam is saying that, from the reasons of this book or the fruits of this book is to purify the heart and cure it from its ailments. وصيانة الجوارح وإزالة أعواجها. Basically, also it will protect the outward body and save it from going astray. وغير ذلك من مقاصد العارفين, and even more reasons for the ones who are basically al-arifin is the one who knows, know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, know about the deen of Islam, right? So other reasons from this book are for them to be better themselves. When your heart is purified, you have health and barakah in your body as well, right? So it's like a direct correlation. Sinfulness not only affects the heart spiritually, like you're going away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it can also affect the heart and the body physically. Sicknesses can come to the person, ailments, depression, fears, anxiety. A lot of these ailments are from a person being away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So not only are they basically missing out on the purification of the soul, but they're also corrupting their physical body and their mental health. And then he talks about his manhaj. وَالْتَزْمُ فِيهِ أَنْ لَا أَذْكُرْ إِلَّا حَدِيثٍ صَحِيحًا مِنَ الْوَاضِحَاتِ. So he says that I have made myself, been strict with myself to only mention authentic. Yes, sister. Yes, Riyad Saliheen, his introduction, the Imam Ibn Nawawi's introduction. I just have the Arabic book, but it's like second to last paragraph of his introduction. Right, that's where we got to right now. Well, yeah. So he's trying to basically only mention authentic hadith that are clear. There's not like too much explanation needed. مضاف إلى الكتب الصحيحة المشهورات. Also adding, what is necessary from the authentic other books that are popular. وأصدر أبواب من القرآن العزيز بآيات كريمات. And I start each chapter with the ayat of the glorious Quran, the honorable ayat from the verses from the glorious Quran, basically. So it's a very beautiful book. Like every chapter he starts with the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he mentions the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? خير الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So this is the best of both worlds. وشح ما يحتاج إلى ضبط أو شرح معنى خفيا بنفائس من التنبيهات. And he will, if there's something that needs like more further explanation or clarification, he will add those things as well. وإذا قلت في آخر الحديث متفق عليه فمعناه رواه البخاري ومسلم. And if I say at the end of the hadith that it is agreed upon, he means it was narrated by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. And this is the highest level of a hadith. So any hadith you see that's muttafaqun alayhi, almost you can take it as like gold, basically, like 100%. So if Bukhari and Muslim agree upon a hadith, that's the highest level. What's the next level after that? Anybody know? In the status of hadith. What's your guess? Bukhari? Yes, that is correct. So muttafaq alayhi, and then Bukhari by himself, and then Muslim by himself. That's the order. So the strongest one is Bukhari and Muslim, and then Bukhari, and then Muslim. And then some say the Muwatta of Imam Malik is considered one of the most authentic books, but it's not only a hadith, so that's why they don't put it in there. And then there's a dispute: is it Imam Nasa'i, then Tirmidhi, and Abu Dawood, and then Ibn Majah. But in general, at least the first three are pretty much agreed upon: Muttafaq alayh, Bukhari, and then Muslim. طيب. وأرجو إن تم هذا الكتاب أن يكون سائقا للمعتني به إلى الخيرات حاجزا له من أنواع القبائح والمهلكات. And I hope that with completing this book, that I have made it for the ones who read it or act upon it a path to righteousness and good deeds, khayrat. And حاجزا, and a prevention from أنواع القبائح والمهلكات, like the different ugly things and the destroyers, meaning the sinfulness or the bad character. So it's a way to righteousness, and it's a way to protect yourself from evil and ugliness. وأنا سائل أخا انتفع بشيء منه أن يدعو لي ولوالدي ومشايخي وسائر أحبابنا والمسلمين أجمعين وعلى الله الكريم اعتمادي. And I'm asking my brothers and sisters, inshallah, whoever reads this book or benefits from it in any way, that you please make dua for me and for my parents and for my teachers, my mashayikh, and my beloved ones, and for all of the Muslims. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following his request, that Allah blesses him and rewards him for his works, and his parents and his teachers and his beloved ones and all of the Muslims. Ameen. And then he says, upon Allah Al-Kareem I'timadi, that I depend upon Allah, the most honorable, the most generous, and I put my dependence upon Him. وَإِلَيْهِ تَفْوِيضِي وَإِسْنَادِي, and to Him I turn my affairs, and I keep as one who gives me support. وَحَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ, and Allah is sufficient for me and the best of protectors. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ, and there's no might or power except Allah, Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, the All-Great, the All-Wise. So that's the introduction of Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. May Allah bless him, and may Allah bless us to learn his work and understand his work and implement his work. And then we'll start, inshallah, with the first chapter. we're not going to get through to it, but we'll at least read the ayat, maybe explain some of them, and then the first hadith of the Prophet, that Imam An-Nawawi reports upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. And the Bismillah is basically, invoking Allah for any action you do. What does Bismillah mean? I'm asking you guys now. Yes. So in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, right? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But there's something implied there. So if I just say, in the name of Allah, Bismillah, does that give a complete meaning? Not necessarily, right? So there's something missing. What do you think it is?
We start with
Yes, so there's one thing called taqdeer, which is implied meaning. So every time you say Bismillah, there's a verb in there. So Bismillahi aqra'u, for example. In the name of Allah I read. Or Bismillahi akulu. In the name of Allah I'm eating. Right? Or like the brother said, Bismillahi abda'u. In the name of Allah I'm starting with. So the Imam, he starts with Bismillah. I'm starting the book with Bismillah, following the Sunnah of Allah Azza wa Jal, who started the Quran with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and following the way the Prophet ﷺ said that any affair or speech that's started or class that's given that doesn't mention the name of Allah, it is cut off. It is a loss, basically, right? So we find the scholars of Islam, they always start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim or Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and then usually they evoke the Salatu wa-Salam ala Rasulillahi Kareem, which the Imam will do later when he mentions the ahadith. Right? So he starts Bab al-Ikhlas wa Ihdar al-Niyya fi Jami' al-A'mal wal-Aqwal al-Bariza wal-Khafiyya. So this is the chapter number 1, upon sincerity and presenting or having present your niyyah, your intention, in all of the affairs of outward acts, al-a'mal, wal-aqwal, and speech, al-bariza, wal-khafiyya. So the outward and the inward, right? Outward speech is like what? Something that you need niyyah in.
so maybe like giving da'wah, especially in I don't know.
Okay, giving da'wah, calling to Islam, that's an outward aqwal, like calling people to good, forbidding the evil, right? Like the brother is saying to, stand for Palestine by spreading the word, to our representatives to call for a ceasefire, right? That's aqwal outward. What is aqwal khafiyya, or inward? What is it? Supplication to Allah between you and Him, right? You can say that outwardly or inwardly. The affairs of the heart in general, right? Like being thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Shukr lillah, it's represented inwardly, right? And then a'mal, like salat, doing it outwardly, and the taqwa or khashya or khushu', all these things are inward a'mal of the heart, right? So having proper niyyah is important or necessary in all of these actions. Speech and physical actions, inward and outward. Like, without niyyah, without ikhlas, the action is not accepted. Right? Can you have an action without niyyah? Without intention? No. Right? That's almost from what they call impossible. Like, you can't think that I'm going to do this action and not have any niyyah or intention to do the action. It's almost impossible, right? If it's something like, what you call adat, like sleeping or eating or taking a shower, for example, technically there might not be a niyyah in that sense, but for any a'mal salihah or ibadat or sinfulness, for example, you have to have some type of intention or niyyah for it to count. Yes?
Isn't it like also better to, even for like adat or this kind of stuff, to have the niyyah? So for example, sleeping, have the niyyah of Allah, like give me the energy to wake up.
Yes. So, inshallah, we're going to expound on it. It's one of the most important principles in the deen. That's why Imam Nawawi starts with this chapter. Also, when we mention the hadith later, inshallah, the scholars usually start with that hadith to rectify their own niyyah. Like why I'm writing this book, right? So the brother was asking, in other affairs like dunyawi affairs, can't you have niyyah for that too, to be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And the answer is yes. So the niyyah, subhanAllah, it's so important, it can nullify your ibadat, or it can amplify your adat. So the most beautiful deeds that you can do, if you don't have proper niyyah, or if you're doing it for other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those beautiful deeds become ugly and nullified and lost. Actually, it could be a sin for you. And that's why we all know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says the first three that will be thrown in the hellfire was the reciter of the Quran, the one who was spending charity, and the one who fought in the cause of Allah, or apparently in the cause of Allah. But when they're asked on the Day of Judgment, why did these things? They will try to say, I did it for you, Allah. And Allah says, you are a liar. You did it for the praise of the people. And they will be thrown into the hellfire. So the outward deeds are beautiful, but their niyyah was ugly. And therefore, their deed was nullified. And in fact, they got punished for it and thrown into the hellfire. Right? The other thing, you can do something that is so, like just a habit, playing a sport, lifting weights, eating, sleeping, smiling. But you can change your niyyah to, this is for the sake of Allah. And that normal thing, which was normally you don't really get any reward for it, becomes a means of reward for you. Something that you're doing, for your own benefit of the dunya, but you put it with the intention of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah in His mercy gives you blessings for that. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, even fi bud'i ahdikum sadaqa, having relationship with your spouse, a sexual relationship, is a form of sadaqah. Because you're protecting yourself from the haram and you're fulfilling your desires in a halal way, with the proper niyyah, you're getting blessings. Right? So the niyyah is the asas of tawheed, the asas of the deen, and the asas of the amal. It is the foundation of our aqidah, our belief system, our creed, our actions, and all of our affairs basically. If the niyyah is missing, then the action is gone. So he starts the Imam with قال الله تعالى وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة وذلك دين القيمة. That we were not ordered except that we should worship Allah مخلصين, sincerely, له الدين, for Him is the religion. حنفاء, Hanif is the religion, the pure religion, free of shirk and idol worship, right? The way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, and they establish the prayer. وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةِ, and they give the charity. وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ, and this is the true or the high religion. And then he goes to the next ayah, that's Surah Al-Bayyinah, ayah 5. And the next one, وَقَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى لَا يَنَالَ اللَّهُ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ. That Allah doesn't receive basically the meat or the blood, but He receives the taqwa from you, right? Meaning, when you're doing inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen, that my prayers and my sacrifice and my salat, my prayers, my sacrifice, my life and my death are for Allah, the Lord of the worlds, right? So everything we should do, we're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this sense, when you're doing the biha, or they used to do like the mushrikeen in the past, thinking, or even the children of Israel, that their blood sacrifices are so important, Allah is saying He doesn't need that. That's not what reaches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the taqwa, meaning that you're doing it for the sake of Allah with proper sincerity and fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what counts. That's what will get your deeds accepted, right? That's why when Adam alayhi salam, his two children, Qabil and Habil, right? Allah accepted from one, He didn't accept from the other. Because one had taqwa and ikhlas and the other didn't, right? And then we know the story. The other one killed his own brother because of jealousy, a'udhu billah. But the point is that, Adam's sons, the reason that one was accepted and one wasn't was because of the ikhlas and the sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the taqwa. And then he says, that's Surah Al-Hajj, ayah 37. وقال تعالى قل إن تخفوا ما في صدوركم أو تبدوه يعلمه الله. Say that if you conceal that which is in your chest or you expose it, Allah knows about it. Right? And all these ayats are pointing that the niyyah is the affair of the heart, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can know what it is, or who is sincere or who is not sincere. Right? We'll stop here, inshallah, for questions, and we'll go further expanding the ayats and start the first hadith, inshallah, next week. If you have any comments or questions now, feel free, inshallah. We'll give like a little time for prayer. Unfortunately, I don't think the pizza made it this week, so we'll have to improvise.